Hello everyone and happy Argo Summit. Alexander Chepornoil, also known as Kushti, is here. And in this talk I'm going to present Dexia, which is a stable coin done as a simulated central bank doing automated market interventions. And let's start with motivation. So in the first place, what is a stablecoin? Stablecoin is a token which price is pegged to an external asset, such as gold, silver, US dollar, euro, Chinese yuan, and so on. Pegging is done in different ways. There are three most common ones. So it can be done by a centralized entity issuing tokens on the blockchain backed by reserves the entity has. In banks, USDT and USDC stable coins are in this class. Then pegging can be done via a purely algorithmic approach, usually by adjusting total supply periodically as done in the Ampleforth protocol. Or pegging can be done also algorithmically by an algorithm which is controlling reserves, usually in cryptocurrencies, and this algorithm is able to buy back tokens with its reserve assets when buyback is demanded. Then we are going to talk about the third class, as Dexia is in this class. And it's the most interesting, probably, talking about decentralized stablecoins. So if we are considering algorithmic collateralized stablecoins, then for any stablecoin protocol of this class, it is possible to get into a zone where there are not enough reserves to buy issued previously tokens back, which is quite obvious, as it is always could be the case that an algorithm is minting tokens when reserve asset price is at the top, and then buying back at the bottom when it's demanded by users. And then obviously there is a gap, so not all the stablecoin tokens can be covered by the reserves. In practice, some designs are stable, such as MakerDAO or CQSD. At the same time, some stablecoins failed, such as Neutrino, BitShares, BitUSD, NewBeats, and so on. Even a successful, let's say, algorithmic stablecoins such as MakerDAO or CQSD do have drawbacks. Different drawbacks possible, such as low capital efficiency, or possible losses even for users investing in stablecoin reserves. Then governance, which is not bad per se, because it's well, a tool, but sometimes, and maybe it's inevitable with time, this tool is not being used properly. So in MakerDAO, for example, well, via the governance tools, we do witness injection of assets with centralized control into reserves, such as USDC, and some algorithmic collateralized stable coins, which not failed, do have unrealistic expectations. So even if they are, well, still doing okay in practice, they could fail in case of market crash events, because they have unrealistic countermeasures for such crashes. For example, some protocols are issuing some financial tools such as bonds to increase reserves, but who will buy a lot of bonds when the market is crashing? So usually such countermeasures are working when the capitalization of a stable coin is small, because, well, usually there is some market maker able to buy bonds, if not so much of them. But when there are a lot of bonds, in case of stablecoin with big capitalization, then yeah, such tools are usually failing, which was witnessed in some failed stablecoins such as Neutrino. Alright, so observing existing stable coins and trying to simplify them and improve them. I've done stablecoin design, which is, I believe, super simple. It's called Dexia. Because it's based on interactions with reference market decentralized exchange, or DEX. In this protocol, there are no additional financial instruments, and well, in general, the protocol is trying to avoid moves which could not work or could not scale, right? So, well, moves which do work when capitalization is small, by example, but do not work when capitalization is big. There are no reserve shares here as RSV tokens in CQSD, and the DEX is following simple philosophy. So well, the reserves are controlled by a simulated central bank, which is trying to build those reserves cautiously. It gives markets time to self-stabilize, and only then it intervenes, also cautiously and slowly. Alright, so let's consider some details now. So there are two sub-protocols in the DEXI stablecoin protocol. So the first sub-protocol is a liquidity pool, which is actually quite standard constant product automated market maker liquidity pool, working like Spectrum, Uniswap, And in addition to Spectrum liquidity pools, it has a redemption fee of 2%. And also some other tweaks we will consider a bit after. All right, the second subprotocol is a DexiBank, which holds ERC reserves to maintain a price in the pool. So for getting a reference price, it is using Trusted Oracle. So in our case, Oracle Pool version 1 or version 2. Well, in a deployment, version 2 will be used. So it does mean that the bank is using a federated Oracle with a big number of participants to reduce trust issues. Okay, then there are few actions the bank can do. So there are two possible minting scenarios. One is called free mint, and well, it is basically about selling new DEXI tokens by using Oracle's price. And free mint is limited, so you can mint up to 2% of DEXI tokens amounts in the liquidity pool per day only. So that is done to avoid printing a lot of DEXI tokens on top. Right, so the bank is trying to get minting events spread in time. Then there is arbitrage mint, so the bank is providing liquidity when DEXI token is above the peg. So when the price of DEXI token in the pool is above Oracle's, and bank is allowing to mint an amount which is needed to get back to the peg. Right, so it can be more than 2%, and actually no limits. Well, any amount of liquidity to get back to the peg when it's over the peg. And there is a fee for both kinds of mint, 0.5% to increase bank reserves and also pay the oracles for the protocol security. And the bank is increasing reserves via minting actions, but then the bank is using reserves to intervene when the peg is broken in another direction to one considered before. So when it's below the peg, means when the price of DEXI token in the pool is below Oracle's. And then the bank is buying back DEXI tokens from the pool, spending ERCs from reserves. And well, intervention is limited, so the bank may spend up to 2% of its reserves pay per day. So it's done to avoid attacks against the bank, possible manipulations, and so on. And the bank is doing interventions slowly, so after some delay, and it's starting interventions when the price is below 98% of reference one. The bank is buying back tokens from a liquidity pool only, and then liquidity pool is acting as a buffer when users are willing to dump the DEXI tokens. The bank is acting after some delay to give markets time to self-stabilize and again avoid manipulations. The bank is slowly accumulating fees to increase its security. And fees in the bank, as you can see, are higher than in case of using LP swap. Means that the bank is intended for big players in the first place if prices are equal, right? So then big players will use the bank if the deal will move price in the LP by more than 0.2% as fee in the LP is 0.3%. Otherwise, it is better to use a liquidity pool if prices are equal. Alright, but what if there are no enough reserves in the bank after all? Then there are some additional stability mechanisms. So if DEXI is severely depegged, means its price is less than 95% of oracles for some time, then DEXI tokens can be extracted from the liquidity pool to restore the price, and the tokens will be locked in a special contract which is allowing them to be returned to the liquidity pool when the price is above oracles again. And to work against bank run from the liquidity pool and to prepare for such extraction, which can be painful in the short term, the withdrawal from a liquidity pool is locked when the price is less than 98% of oracles. That is an addition to the liquidity pools design I did talk about. Then what makes the DEXI token stable? So extraction from the liquidity pool helps in extreme cases for sure. But it should be a measure of last resort. A liquidity pool is actually helping the bank, so it can be seen as another reserve, actually, kind of buffer before the bank. The bank is accumulating fees, so with time it's getting more and more liquidity for supporting the pack. And Also, there is a plan to burn some amount of initial LP tokens, and then probably liquidity pool will accumulate some protocol owned fees as well, and actually it will accumulate even more than that because of LP tokens got lost and so on. Right. Also, let me note that big dumps well absorbed by LP. Big dumps are coming at loss for whales doing them, and big dumps are actually simplifying banks' life, so it is simpler to restore after big dumps with ARK reserves. But even more, as bank is giving time to market, to self-stabilize. There are a lot of possible games here, which are also helping with preserving stability, actually. For example, after a big dump, if the Dexy bank has enough reserves to survive, to restore the pack, it is profitable actually for a trader to buy cheap Dexy tokens to bring the price slightly below 98%, and then the bank will intervene to get the price above 98, and then a trader can slowly sell in batches to get slightly below 98 again and again and again. So basically selling tokens to the bank for a higher price. However, during that the market sentiment and the price could change. In most cases, this strategy is good for the bank actually and its reserves. And this is just one strategy I've considered, so likely there are other strategies possible as well, and this is the reason why the bank is acting after some delay, so giving markets time to self-stabilize. Alright, so I've done some simulations, and in simulations the design is doing really well against different simulated market movements, such as market crashes or long depressions even. So let's talk about implementation as I've done with the design. As you can see, it's actually super simple. For implementation, we consider Dexy Gold in the first place, gold-backed stablecoin. And unlike CQSD protocol, so here will be oracles rewarding being set in the protocol. So it is important to reward oracles as this is the only one human-controlled part of the whole stack, actually. And as we are using Oracle Pools 2.0, it allows to reward oracles with custom tokens. So then there will be a special Gold Oracle reward token, also known as GORD. And part of minting fees will go to contract, which will then buy back GORDs with ERCs, Goddess fees, and it will send GORDs back to the Oracle pool contract. So then, yeah, what does it mean is that while the protocol is alive, well, part of fees we will always go to oracles. And then to pay for development marketing efforts, some GORDs will be locked in an emission contract, releasing fixed GORDs amounts per block, and rewards will go to, well, a blockchain cooperative, also known as DAO, developing DEXI protocol and UIs for it, and the same token will be used to secure SigGold as well. SigGold is Gluon based stablecoin pegged to gold as well, right? So SigGold will use the same Gold Oracle pool. So basically, the Oracle pool operators will profit from both protocols, maybe even more in the future. All right, then about governance. It's better to avoid governance whenever possible. But as well, the implementation is quite complex despite the simplicity of the protocol, and parameters, well, chosen in pretty much handwavy way, actually. So maybe some upgrade will be needed, who knows. So then there will be upgrade keys for some initial period of time, like 3 or 4 months. Keys will be held by Oracle operators or subset of it, as Oracle pool operators already have some control over the protocol anyway. And then after that period of time, it will be proposed to bond the keys via an atomic bond contract, where needed amount of keys will be bond. No any key will be bond at all. All right, so what's the current status of the implementation? Let me report. So contracts are done and tested. Backend is mostly done with minting actions, intervention, and so on. Front end for the bank UI is done. Now there is work on the LP front end, and gold price Oracle pool is tested on the testnet, and mainnet deployment is coming. So in the Oracle pool mainnet deployment, likely there will be 20 to 30 oracles. So if you wanna be an Oracle, please reach Oracle pool developers. Likely there will be a community chat on that, on who is eligible and who will be an Oracle pool operator. That's it. Thank you for your attention.